Hi everybody, welcome to the podcast. Really excited today to be with Mike Bates, somebody I've known for quite a while now. I've wanted him on the podcast for months and months. I'm going to let Mike do his full introduction because I won't do it any justice at all. Mike, nice to have you with us. Can you let everybody know who you are, what you do and what you've done?
Yeah, well, what do I do? Well, I run a Jiu Jitsu academy on Street Lane in North Leeds, so you might have seen it, Gracie Barra Roundhay. I founded that in lockdown when we couldn't go out, and I said I want to start a contact sport, and everyone went, you've gone mad. I'm not allowed out. But I just resigned from a 20-year career in the MOD and the military, so I was in the Royal Marines, served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Northern Ireland in the early 2000s, and then went on to work in intelligence for the MOD, across 15-year career, working in surveillance, running agents, working undercover, and that was kind of my life. And then I kind of wanted to change it, and we've spoken off air, just haven't we, about why I wanted to change that.
Yeah.
I'm also more importantly, a husband and a father of two boys, one of which is an aspiring footballer, and I think that's what we're going to get into today, aren't we?
We are. I was going to say then, of all the jobs you've done, the most difficult is that last part there, isn't it? The dad.
Yeah, you can convince agents to go to war zones much more easily than you can convince your kids to tidy the bedrooms, let me tell you. But it's a challenge that I relish almost as a dad, because I think we've got a real opportunity with children to create the next generation of amazing people. And I view my job as a parent, if you want to call it a job, my role almost, as a really important one. Because I think if you don't view it in those terms, and you perhaps take the easy option with parenting sometimes, you're really responsible for the next generation, and then even the generation after that. So the formative years, certainly that my children are in right now, when I was their age, it wasn't this upbringing that I had. It was a broken home.
Yep.
It was no male role model. It was no one telling me that they were proud of me or I was doing the right thing. And I've had to figure that out for myself. And perhaps that's why I went off to Afghanistan to figure it all out. I don't want my children to have to go do that. I want to help them kind of develop whilst they're here at home and nice and safe.
That's one of the things I wanted to get in, and why I was so keen to get you on, because I think it'd be easy for people to look at you now and think, well, it's all right for him. He's been in the military. He's got a successful business, so that's all fine. But actually, you weren't a good kid, were you? And I've listened to podcasts that you've been on before, and the stories are brilliant. And Joe will talk about now so you're not coming at this from, I'm almost a goody check me out. You've actually been on the other side where it could have gone completely the other way for you.
Oh, 100%,
and you've come through that. Can you tell us a little bit about your I guess
Yeah.
the childhood years, I suppose?
Well, I mean, it was a normal upbringing. I say it was an unremarkable upbringing, because it was really. It was a little semi-detached house in Doncaster. My dad was a plumber. I was the eldest of 3 kids. When my mum and dad's marriage broke down, that really sent me into a bit of a spiral. And so by the age of 13, I was taking drugs at 13. I was smoking at 13. I was drinking at 14. I was arrested at 15, put in the cells in Doncaster for being drunk on top of a car with my PE teacher in Doncaster Town Centre. I was a good drummer, so I was playing in like adult bands, and he'd come to watch us, and it all got out of hand. That didn't go well for his career either.
I bet he didn't give you detention again.
No, he didn't. He was a good guy, actually. Ashley Pascoe, if you're listening. You're not listening, but let's just imagine he might be. Yeah. So, look, and that I was so bad, I think, in my own mind, that I bought my mum a bunch of flowers on my 18th birthday to apologise for how I'd been as a child.
Wow.
Because I was quite, I would say, disruptive. I was in what we would term therapy now, counselling, when I was 13, although I didn't know it was that at the time. I used to have to go to a place linked to the hospital called Cheswold House. It was a family resource centre. And I used to have to tell my mates I was going to an asthma clinic because I was embarrassed to tell them I was going to speak to people. And my mum was taking me there to try and unpick what the hell was going on. How had I gone from this normal kid at 10, top set, down to the bottom set, and then ultimately I came back to the top set and did all right. But it was the period which was really challenging for my mum, and really challenging for me too, right? So, yeah. So going back to my kids, like, they've not got that. They've got a really settled upbringing, and it would be quite easy for us just to kind of, I suppose, sit back, take our foot off the gas and just let them do what they want. But I think it's really important to help them and guide them through so they don't end up, hopefully, in those same places that I was.
What do you, when I was thinking about the chat we're going to have, that's what came to my mind, the fact that you went through that period, came out of it, and now have gone on to bigger and better things and more to come. How do you think the whole background has influenced you as a dad, as a parent?
I think this. I'm not sure my childhood has, but I think joining the Royal Marines certainly has, in some positive and some negative ways, and that won't be a surprise to most people listening. You know, the Marines asks a lot of you.
Yeah.
Commando training is the hardest in the world, the hardest basic military training in the world. 30 weeks, and you just get beasted all that time. But they instill in you a sense of self-discipline that will see you through almost anything. And obviously I've lent on those experiences and subsequently built upon them in my career in the MOD and now my ocean row and everything else, and building my business and everything. So I think what I try and give my children is, more than anything else, I try and be a good role model for them. So I don't just talk the good game as a parent. Or you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you need to tidy your room. No one's more tidy in this house than me and my wife. Like, we set the standard for how things should be. No one trains harder than me and my wife. Like, we were up at 6, we were in the gym, we're working hard. So it's no surprise then to my children when we say to them, if you want to play professional football, you need to get up and practice. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I think there's two parts of it. I try and bring all the positives from that self-discipline. I think on the negative side, I think I'm probably quite a tough parent to please.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you have to stop yourself sometimes?
I find it quite hard
going back
to stop
into that mindset.
I think if I'm being honest, and we're here to be completely candid, aren't we? I think, my standards are high.
Yeah.
And that's not, I suppose, it's never dictatorial. It's always a conversation, but I expect two things to be absolutely nailed on, Luke. Okay, and those two things are effort and behaviour.
Yeah.
I don't expect amazing results in the classroom. I don't expect amazing results on the football field or the rugby field or the martial arts academy, because you can't control a lot of that stuff. But the two things you can control are how hard you try and how good you are as a person. And those are the two things as a parent that I have a pretty non-negotiable level on. Yeah. You have to be good to other people, you have to be kind, and you have to try your best. And if you've done both those things, the outcome will just take care of itself.
And you get more from that as a person to take later in life as well, don't you? We spoke about that off air, that if you put the effort in football, jiu-jitsu, whatever it might be, and it doesn't come off, you've instilled in yourself a work ethic that will help you further down the line, whether it be in a job or the military, whatever you end up getting into. I don't think it's ever a bad thing trying your hardest, regardless of the
no, and you asked me about kind of like coming from that challenging upbringing to where I am now. Like Damien Hughes, I was on the High Performance podcast briefly. He speaks about this wall of evidence, and I visualise that as every time you do something really challenging but you succeed, you almost lay another brick in that wall, and that wall's right behind you. It's like a wall here, look. So it's an evidential wall. It's a real thing. All your past achievements and successes and even failures, they're in that wall. And so when you turn around, you can see it. And people often ask, like, we spoke about this book I'm writing, like, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to row this ocean on your own? I just know I can do it because I've got this huge wall behind me that I've built up over 20 odd years, 25 years of working really hard, trying my best, failing sometimes, but bouncing back and never giving in. And that instills in you this kind of inner confidence. And that's what I want for my children. I want them to have an inner confidence that no matter what they set out to do in life, whether that's in business, on an academic footprint or whatever, they've got a wall of evidence that they're creating that gives them the confidence. So when they walk into that room, they're able to go and be the best they can be.
It's a great way of putting it. And you're right what you said before as well about matching and mirroring, I call it. It's I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old, so very different stages of life to your two boys. I'm trying to instill things like I want them to read a little bit and get used to books, but I can't just say to my 4-year-old read. She has to see me reading.
Yeah.
I'd like her to drink a little bit more water than she does. So guess what I need to be doing? And you're right, whereas you get a lot of people that just expect more of their kids than they're prepared. So Orson and Gabe have seen you 6 in the morning out working out, doing it. They've seen what you do in your business, and then it's no surprise. And we'll get on to Orson because I've helped coach him recently. It's no surprise to learn that Orson has been out doing training and running at 6 in the morning of his own accord. You've not told him to do that, but he's realised.
I mean, I'm pretty sure in the quiet times, there's a part of them that thinks, I wish he'd bloody not be doing it. And I wish I had a dad who was a bit more normal. I mean, I'm still a super embarrassing dad, right?
Yeah.
So, like, they didn't know what I did for a career because I weren't allowed to tell them. And I'm still not allowed to. I've been asked by my former employer not to explicitly say who I worked for, so I won't. But when I told them what I did, I thought they'd be like, you're the coolest guy I've ever met. Like, we watch Alex Rider and James Bond and all that. They weren't interested. They still thought I was an embarrassing dad. And I wonder whether part of them, I'm sure they don't, but occasionally I do wonder whether they think, this is a bit too tough, this. I wish I just had a dad who sat on the couch drinking lager and watching football because that's an easier existence. But they haven't got a choice, Luke, because they've got me. So it's the way we're doing it.
And I dare say when they're our age, they'll look back and think, I'm glad my dad was like.
And that's the thing that I always come back, exactly right, mate. And so when I'm rationalising that and I'm thinking, are you being too hard on me? Are you expecting too much? I go back to what I said before. We're trying to create a really good human being here who can survive in a world which is really difficult. You know, life is difficult. No one's going to just walk up and give you a job. No one's going to pay your mortgage. No one's going to find you an amazing partner for the rest of your life. No one's going to teach your kids how to. You've got to do that yourself.
Yeah.
So we've got a responsibility, haven't we, as I said before, as parents, to be really good role models, have really, really strong values, and to help our children thrive in that world.
Just a quick point. Do you ever say well done to either of them?
All the time.
Because you were saying before that are you a bit too harsh sometimes? But yeah, do you?
No, all the time, mate.
Yeah.
And I always tell them I'm really proud of them, even if they've failed, because I never had that. And as I said, I don't want them to be wondering what they need to do in life.
Yeah.
But I also will tell them when they haven't done well. And I'll also tell them where they've perhaps not met their own or my expectations or mum's expectations around what it is to be a good person and to try hard. And I think it's about being honest as a parent, isn't it?
100%.
You know, schools now, sometimes there's no kind of winners' medals for races and stuff like that. I don't get that. I think people should be rewarded for their effort. I understand that everyone needs to be given an opportunity, and I get that. Equal opportunity is I'm everything for, but not equal outcome, because outcome is about the amount of work you're able to put in. Now, some people will say, well, this person's got an advantage. I'm not talking socially here. You know, my son isn't a fast footballer, but he can do 2,000 kick-ups when he was 9-year-old. Yeah. So there's always a way to change the lens slightly, right? Yeah. But yeah, I always tell them really well done. I always tell them I'm proud of them, and I always tell them when they haven't done as well as they could.
It's those two words are really powerful, but it's a conversation my wife actually had recently with I was raised by my granddad, and he was telling my wife about how his dad never said well done to them. Right. And my granddad did really well for himself, self-made and whatever. But he'd tell his friends how well my granddad was. So he was proud of him. Right. It was just that this is what you're talking back in the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, slightly different generation.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And what's interesting is that I think my granddad has always struggled to say he has told me it, but you could see it was a struggle because of the area they've gone through. And then the other thing that you mentioned there about being a good parent, I had this chat to my mum the other day about it. My mum we used to call her the best worst mum in the world. She'd pull us out on a Tuesday to go to Alton Towers on a school day. That sort of thing. We loved her. She was brilliant. But she was she loved me and my brother, obviously, you know, clearly still does, but she was petrified of us falling out. She hated it. if I fell out with my mum or my brother fell out with my mum, and to the point where there was probably, and she would admit this, a lack of telling us right from wrong sometimes. If we were fighting, she'd kick off, obviously, but there's times when maybe we should have been told things, but we weren't because she didn't want to cause that argument. And we had this chat to say, but a good parent would praise, well done, proud, but also say, well, listen, that wasn't good. And you need both of those things, don't you?
You need both, and you need consistency, don't you? And I think that's where, I think as a parent, I would encourage anyone to, well, let me just caveat this. I'm not telling anyone how to parent, that, because you've got to do it your own way.
Yeah.
And we certainly made that decision when we had our first child, Orson, like we were going to parent our way. We're going to listen to advice, but we were going to do it our way. I think that the key thing I would encourage anyone to do is make sure you know what your own values are. Make sure you know what matters to you. And you can even list them down, and be consistent with those values. So if your values are hard work, being a good person, being empathetic, whatever that is, that's what you've got to be instilling in your kids on a consistent basis.
Agreed. How do you keep the boys motivated? And that can be sport, school, whatever. How do you keep them? You were saying before, building that wall of evidence. How do you keep them motivated?
I think I try and show them, just so on the role modelling side, I try and show them what success can look like. They're like any kid, I want this car, I want a Lamborghini when I'm older, I want this, that and the other. And I talk to him honestly about what it's going to take to get that. When Orson said that he wanted to be a professional footballer when he was 7 or 8, I sat down with him and I said, right, okay, well, there's this thing called the 10,000 hour rule. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Orson. It's like, Dad, I'm 7. I'm like, right, okay, let me talk you through it. So we broke down the amount of years it would take for him to get to a scholarship, so 16. And then we divided the number of hours by the amount of weeks that he had. And so I said, okay, you've got to be practicing 19 hours a week, every single week, between now and you're 16. So we've done stuff like that, and we've written that stuff out, and we've encouraged him to create charts for the 6 weeks holidays about the days he's got and the days what he wants to do in those days in terms of practice. And that's the motivation too, because it's up in his bedroom.
Brilliant.
We've invested in him. We've given him sessions with people like yourself and Matt Ogden, to try and develop him and give him that little bit of extra push. But ultimately, I think that child needs to be motivated towards that goal themselves. We're going to get into this, I'm sure, but that I always say that Orson's driving the train in his football journey.
Yeah.
So the motivation for him to be a professional footballer comes from him, not from me. Because if I'm motivating him to do that, then I'm pushing him, and that's a pushy parent. And he might not want to play football. He might decide in a year's time he's had enough of football. And I don't want him to ever be in a position where he doesn't feel comfortable coming to me or his mum and saying, I'm out, because it's not making me happy. So I try and motivate from my own actions. I try and work with them in a practical sense to get them to engage in the process they need to go through to achieve their goals, and to give them that roadmap, and that hopefully keeps them motivated. But things like paying him a quid for scoring a goal, I tried that for a month when he was 7, and it didn't work. So he never passed the ball. So I think it's just got to be doing it yourself, giving him a roadmap to achieving great things and what it takes to do that, and then actually just letting them get on with it.
Yeah. It's like you said, maybe having that chat to them about, because we ask parents all the time asking us for our advice and stuff. I had a dad the other day talk to me, and he was just saying, look, he just doesn't look that into it when he's there, but he really enjoys it. And I said, yeah, but that's fine. He's getting other things from it. He's only 5. He's getting other things from it, and he's socialising, communication, speaking with other adults, running around outside, active time. So it doesn't. But I think, yeah, you're right. Once they get to that age and they say, right, I want to do this. I hate, people get bored of me saying it, I hate all the nonsense on the sidelines, all the coaches that shout stupid stuff, the parents that shout stupid stuff from the sidelines. But I do believe that if your child has said they want to do this, and into high school and so forth, like Orson now at York City, if they've said I want to do this, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be a pushy parent, but I'm going to demand that you give me everything you've got, because I'm taking time out to take you to York, I'm taking you to one-to-one, I'm paying for stuff.
Yeah, when we've had this conversation this week, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a little bit. But I mean, on that bit about shouting stupid stuff, I was that parent. You know, and I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you know, we're perfect. Like, I helped, he went to play for, we took him, the first time he ever played football, we took them both to Roundhay's rugby. Because it was like 2010, Orson was born, World Cup, England team didn't turn up in South Africa. I thought, I ain't playing football, these guys are prima donnas. So I took him to rugby, which I like to play, and he just put ball on the floor and started running around kicking it. I thought, right, okay, he wants to play football. And he said, rugby's boring. This was he's like 4. Rugby's boring, you don't do anything. I want to kick it. So I said, right, okay. So we took him to Allerton Grange School. There was like an indoor setup, just once a week on a Friday. And all the parents started calling him Perlo because he wore a Perlo top. And he had like a little bit of natural flair. Yeah. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And then he joined his first team, Yorkshire Amateurs. And I was expecting him to walk onto the pitch and do what he was doing at Alton Grange. But he walked onto the pitch for his first game. Honestly, mate, he stood in the middle of the pitch, frozen, didn't move, kind of a half smile on his face because he wanted to be there, but he just didn't know what to do. And the whole game was going on around him, and he kind of looked over at me like, shit, like, what am I doing here? And we've gone from there. And then I helped coach that team for the first year, and I was awful because all I did was rant at him from the sidelines and put him under too much pressure, and he wasn't playing any flow. He was looking over and we're doing the right thing, and I would just be on him and on him. And when you're looking at your own child playing football, you're not seeing the team or the game. You're just laser focused on them. Yeah. And actually you're biasing all the negatives they're doing. You don't even see the positives.
No.
You're just like, well, what are you doing? You should have done that. Why are you doing? It was awful. So I said after the first season, I can't do that.
Do you think you did that because of how you were taught maybe sport and football, or was that more the background?
No, I did it. I did it only, mate, because I loved him so much and I wanted him to be the best footballer he could ever be. And I was so invested in his football. It was nothing other than, like, he would go in for a tackle and I'd feel it. I'd physically feel the impact. Yeah. I was so invested in the game, but that isn't a healthy thing to do. I needed to take a step back, and I said, I can't do that next season. I want to watch my boy play football. Yeah. And then it was a process then, I would say, over the next probably 2-3 years, up until him being 10, where I really, like, every season said, right, just talk less. Don't say anything. Let him just do it. Don't go, talk about it in the car on the way there. And I'm still learning that now because I find it hard. Only because I want him to be the best he can be. Yeah. But actually, all it does is put him under more pressure.
You're right, though, and it's something I've spoke to Nick about. I think a lot of the shouting stuff, I think it comes from a good place a lot of the time. You just want what's best for your child, and you're trying to help them, aren't you? It does come from a good place. It's what people need to understand is that it's impacting. I had a chat last night to a parent who they played on Saturday, and there was an 8-year-old being shouted at by parents calling him a cheat. And it's like, and again, taking myself away from the emotion of that, it's those parents will just want their children to win that game so badly that they're. But if you videoed that and showed them it 2 days later, you'd hope they'd be mortified. So I do think a lot of this comes from a good place, but people don't reflect often enough to think, actually, if you've told Orson what to do for, when I don't know how long you played that, but say 90 minutes now, and now that he's this age, who's won in the end? Him or you? What has he learned? You've just told him what to do from minute 1 to minute 90.
I mean, there has been a number of areas of his game, speaking about him specifically, where I think I have had a really positive influence with him. So his physicality, for instance. He was a really timid kid, completely different to Gabriel, my youngest lad, who'll just fly into any rugby tackle, he's not bothered. So we've had to work on that. We've had to work on his ability to be able to project his voice in a game and lead a game. And now he's the captain of York City's under-13s team. So he's clearly doing well. But that stuff he's had to learn. And he wouldn't have learned that had it not been for me being with him and saying, look, going to a tackle a bit harder. It's okay, you can do that. And then afterwards saying, look how strong you are when you did that. You see, you knocked that kid over. Then he'd actually feel amazing. He'd be like,
But that would have been through the game, will it? Now,
no, that's on reflection.
That's the difference. Is that I think that's really powerful stuff. But it's more powerful afterwards.
Yeah.
When you're praising things like a tackle, praising the fact that he's projecting his voice a little bit more. I think if you're doing that during the game, it just confuses them.
Very occasionally, though, I still will kind of, without speaking, I'll do that. And that's our little thing to him. If he's gone a bit quiet in the game, maybe he's not had much of the ball, it's like just a reminder, you're the captain.
Yeah.
Get your team going. And then you'll hear him again. And so I think there are ways to support your child from the sidelines. But I've certainly learned some harsh lessons myself and how not to do it.
And what's interesting, when we've been doing this for a long time now, and recently we chatted about these 3 players that we work with at the moment. One of them, we are pretty convinced she'll end up playing Women's Premier League. The other 2 will likely be professional. One will likely play Premier League, we think. And what's really interesting is when you look at their parents, they're like you in terms of, right, you want to do this, let's do it. I'll invest in you, but you're giving me 100% if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. But it's led by them, like you say, it's been led by us, and they have said, I want to do this, and the second that they say I don't, they've all said, that's it, it's done, forget it.
Out of interest, of all the children that you teach then, those 3, how can you highlight them? Is that from a technical perspective? Is that from a character perspective, or is it a combination of a number of different
Yeah, so ability clearly is one thing.
what are you looking for at that age?
But you get movement, as in how they move as well. They've clearly got, and the Alex Ferguson quote, he always said, they've obviously got to be able to play, but it's also the character. So it's how they strike a ball, it's how they dribble the ball, how they move the ball, how they move themselves, how they control the bodies. But the biggest thing we see is the mentality. They are obsessed, that word. They are obsessed. They're obsessed with winning, but they're obsessed with learning. When we coach them, it's at a different intensity. I mean, I'm shattered after I coach some of these kids because they've kept me on my toes. It's a different level of intensity. That for me is what separates them. But I think some parents get lost in, oh, my kid likes football, so that means they're obsessed with it. Yeah. There's levels to it.
And that I suppose is my conversation in my own head. We spoke about this in the kitchen about Orson driving the train, because, and I mentioned it before, like, only he knows how much he loves football. Because, of course, any child wants to please the parents, and he knows that I'd love him to be successful in whatever he did. But he wants to play football, so obviously I would love him to be successful at football. So I often have that conversation with myself, like, does he really love it? Is he obsessed? Or where is he on that scale? And I think that's something that I wrestle with a lot. Because clearly if he's not obsessed, out there doing it all the time and football's everything, he ain't going to make it, because the kids who are obsessed will. And then I wrestle, and this is just my own internal struggle, I suppose, as a parent. How much should we invest in him now then? Because will he look back when he's 16 and wish he hadn't have done it, now he hasn't made it? And how much have we lost of his childhood, where he could have been just riding about with his mates on his bike, and he could have just been going bowling or going to the cinema, and he's not doing that, he's playing football. And was he doing that for himself, or was he doing that for us? I think that's a really difficult, complex question. But I think the best thing you can do as a parent, and certainly I try and do, is constantly have that conversation with yourself all the time. Yeah,
and it's that line between fun and work. And as they get older, it starts being a little, especially if they have got, because I've coached Orson, as we said, he has got this mindset of I want to do it, I want to get all the way. If he's still enjoying playing, then fine. But the second he stops enjoying it and it becomes work, that's when you're going to have issues. My whole ethos now has changed massively from when we started to now, and I think for us it's about keeping children involved in sport as long as possible and well into adulthood. So even if Orson doesn't go on to bigger and better things within football, how nice will it be when you're 60 and he's having a knockabout on a Sunday morning playing Sunday League football or Saturday League football, still enjoying it and still got a smile of it. I think that's a win in the end. And I dare say, and we spoke about this in the kitchen, I dare say that all the stuff that he did, getting up at 6, training 2 or 3 times a week, playing 2 or 3 times a week, has helped him succeed in other things in life anyway, and whether that's in football or not.
Yeah, I mean, York have just started this new initiative, which is really good, actually. That they're talking to children now at Orson's age, well, throughout the whole academy age groups, about the other jobs in sport that aren't just professional football.
Yeah.
And the earlier you can have those conversations. So I've said to him, like, what are you going to do if you're not? Like, let's be honest, the chance of you making it pro is so slim and unrealistic. Not just because of where he is in the scheme of things now, being at York City, because that's the very bottom of the ladder, right? But the way he moves, he's not got natural pace, but yet he's really technical. He's a natural leader, but like the chance of you making it are pretty slim. What are you going to do? He wants to coach.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, have that as something else you can do. He even said, I wouldn't mind reffing. I was like, I'm not sure about that. But you need to have some mates when you're older. But even like coaching, so there's a guy who's rowing the Atlantic same year as me this year, who's Man City's under-18s coach. He was the under-14s coach last year. Really, really lovely bloke. And he said he was heading towards semi-pro football, realised he wasn't probably good enough to make it, and so jumped out early to start coaching and dedicate his time to coaching. And all the rest of his cohort continued to play, fizzled out, but he was so far ahead in the coaching, he's now at Man City's under-18s lead coach. So I think, again, those are conversations with Orson that we'll continue to have with him as he goes through his journey. But at the minute, he's the captain of the side, so he's obviously doing something.
This is a good thing for parents to know that there are so many amazing things for children to get involved with as they get older within football and within sport. Let's look at football specifically. There's now the rise of semi-professional academies that are putting children through, or teenagers through college. And then there's scholarships to America, which one of my best friends did. Fantastic experience, 4 years out there in California, Florida, then New York. He's got stories to tell. He's made lots of friends worldwide. There's a lot of different things. The coaching thing is something I know now a lot of academies put them through courses, because we've got an ex-pro with us now, which I'll tell you so in a second, and he's got his badges as a result of that. And I think it's a fantastic thing. I like your man there at Man City. I was playing semi-professional football, and I knew I wasn't good enough. I didn't have that extra bit. So I dropped back and started playing with my friends Saturday football, did my coaching badges, and now I'm working full-time in football, which ultimately is what I wanted. I'd love to have scored a winning goal for England in the World Cup final, clearly, but I'm working in football and enjoyed it, and that's yourself with Jiu Jitsu. And that's what I think a lot of parents listening to this need to understand, is that if the more fun you can make it, the more committed you can make them by not being that obsessive parent, the chances are they'll end up getting into something as a result of staying in the game longer that actually makes them happy. Yeah.
There's something else as well, I think. So he went to York. I don't know where they saw him, but they saw him playing football when he was like 7. And they said, we want to invite him down to York's Development Centre. So we went down there, and there was like, I think 3 or 4 tiers to get to the actual shadow squad or whatever when he was 7. So we went through all them, and he kept moving him up. And then they said, we want to sign him when he was 9. But we just felt he was too young to be in any academy. So we said, no thanks. We walked away. We went down to Catalan and made an agreement with Matt that we were going to continue his development there for a number of years and then come back to the academy system if he was good enough when he was a bit older. And then he went trials for Leeds City Boys in his final year of junior school.
Primary school,
yeah. He was centre mid, got through to the final trial. We think he probably had COVID because he wasn't well. He went to a trial, just missed out. And I called York back up and they said, look, I remember him, bring him down. We want to put him on a month's trial. And after a week, they said we want him, which was brilliant. My point being, we weren't trying to get into Leeds United or Man City or Man United or Liverpool. Or York City's all right. And it's good for him insofar as it's a really lovely setup and there's much less pressure. So he's likely, because well, I think anyway, of course, any parent thinks this, he's in the top % of his academy side, he's the captain of the team, he's doing quite well in York City. I'd much rather he were there and thriving at a lower level academy than he was scrabbling about on the bench at Man City and not getting a game and then getting released and then falling out with football and then trying to find a new club. And I don't want that for him. I don't think he's and I think this is where you've got to really think hard about the type of child your child is. I don't think I'm not sure any child is, but certainly also I don't think he's resilient enough in himself to take those knocks.
Yeah, and it's really interesting what you said there about the fact that you could have taken him to that environment, because regardless of where York are on the tier, it's an academy system. Taking him away from that, or not letting him go into that at 8-9 years old and letting him go and essentially play, there's so much research now gone into the fact that actually not being in these places from a young age benefits, because you do build a little bit of grit. You do build, as much as you just said there, you do build a little bit of different sort of resilience compared to some of these kids that have been in academies from 5 years old. Those three that I mentioned prior, one of them, he's at the Premier League club. He didn't join until, I think he was under 9 or under 10. And interestingly, his mum told me that a lot of the kids in his team that had been there since 5 have been released. And she thinks it's because of the fact that he was allowed that play time. A lad called Luke, great name, he's just joined us as a coach, ex-pro, signed a pro deal the same day as Jack Clark for Leeds United, who's now at Sunderland. One of the youngest in Leeds' history to sign a scholarship, really well regarded. He didn't join a grassroots club until he was 12, a grassroots club, and he just said, I just played. Because there's all these things, that this formalised training that takes a lot of the spark away from kids. 100%. So I think the way that you did that was brilliant. And there's lessons to be learned there, because I think people misconception of, I need them in an academy now, and then they also think that once they're in this academy, that's it now, pension, get me the Merc, get me the Ferrari. It's like no, that's it.
I think it depends where you are. The guy I'm talking about at Man City was telling me that they'd made from their under-18 squad last year 48 million quid in selling players from Man City's under-18. So clearly, and he said those lads who are in that academy at that age group in his team now will be millionaires themselves next year, which is a bizarre thought. But if that is your motivation to become a footballer, it's such an extrinsic motivation that it's not going to keep you going when everyone else is working really hard. You've got to be intrinsically motivated by wanting to achieve anything which is hard to achieve, whether that's joining the Marines, whether that's owning your own business, whether that's being a professional sports person. It has to be about wanting to do it for you.
Yeah.
And that comes back to then, doesn't it? Why is my child telling me they want to do this? Are we having honest conversations about the amount of work it's going to take to get there? And then what are we putting in place to help them achieve, but how are we holding them accountable? So let's get on to what we were talking about before with Orson. So we always say, and I've always said, that he drives the train and we are just passengers on the train of his football journey. Now, we'll keep shoveling coal in that train to keep it moving if he wants to keep driving the train. But we're not going to keep shoveling coal in if he isn't the one out there working really hard. And so even this last week, we've had another very frank, quite upsetting conversation together as a family with him, where I'm saying, look, this was the deal, and your training's dropping off. And it's dropping off, and it's been replaced by things like Snapchat, which is fine. You've got to have your friends, and I get it. Sorry, mate, I'll just shove that over there. Okay. You've got to do that, but you can't be spending more time on your phone than you are with the football. Because if you are, that's a choice, and that is your choice. But it's not commensurate with the amount of time it takes for me and your mum to get you to York 3 times a week. That's not fair on us as a family. And as I've always said to Sarah, we don't want to get to 16, and I've said it earlier, he gets released and we think we should have pulled the plug earlier because he weren't that bothered. So it was another frank, honest conversation this weekend. He was quite upset by it, but it was honest and open. And 6 o'clock Monday morning, he's in the garden, in the pitch black, kicking a ball about.
Do you think that was Do you think that was him? Is he, going back to what you said earlier, is he doing that for you, or do you think he's doing it for him?
No, I think he's doing it for him. I think he, because we always say to him, we say, we're not bothered if you play football or not. I couldn't care less if he play football. Honestly, I don't care if he plays football or does something else. But if he's going to do it, he's going to try his hardest because he's chosen to do it. So no, I think it was a bit of a shot across his bows again, a little bit of a wake-up call. And we need to consistently do this with children, don't we, as they mature and start to see the world more broadly, because he's now in year 8. They've got phones. Girls are starting to come on their horizon. Bloody hell, at his age, I was smoking weed, right? So, like, there's all these other things starting to appear, and he has to make choices. And I think you can't make a decision with a child aged 8 and then not have another conversation with them until they're 16. Like, it's going to evolve, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
of course
I think it's just reaffirming those, if you want to be transactional about it, the agreement you've made as a parent and a child. And I think sometimes there's actually real benefit to that, saying, okay, tell us what you want. I want to play football. Okay, this is what it takes, and this is what we're prepared to do to support you. But it's an agreement. We're going to shake hands on it. If you don't live up to your side, then we'll take away our side. And I think that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, I think what can happen almost without realising is that you become that pushy parent. You're driving them to York or Man City 3-4 times a week. They're bloody miserable, but they daren't tell you they want to stop. And I'll tell you a quick story. So a friend of mine, really good friend, a guy called Alex, his dad worked in the oil industry and they lived in Saudi. And he was a really good swimmer, still is a really good swimmer. And he was so good that he swam for the Saudi national team, the Kings team, schoolboys. Only white kid there, but he was an amazing swimmer. And they came back to the UK and he went to boarding school. And they were sat in the principal's office. And his dad was telling him he swims for the Kings team. And the principal said, brilliant, you're going to swim for our team and nationals and all this kind of stuff. And he said, right, Alex, we just want to have a conversation just with you, without your mum and dad, about the school. So his mum and dad walked out and he said, all right, brilliant about swimming. And Alex turns around to the principal. He was only, I think he was 14, might have been a bit younger. He said, I never want to swim in my life ever again. As soon as they've gone back to Saudi, I'm not swimming again.
Really?
He said, all I've had for the last 4 years is my dad stood at the end of a pool with a stopwatch. Not good enough, do it again. Not good enough, do it again. He said, I hate swimming. But he couldn't tell his mum and dad. I don't want my kids to be in that position. So, you know, consistent, honest conversations, I think, with each other and giving your child a chance to quit is fine. And I'd much rather that than be in a position where Alex was, where he felt petrified to tell his parents. And he had to wait till they left the bloody country to stop the thing that was making him miserable.
Because you can make it fun. And you look at the guy there, he stood at the thing with a stopwatch. I think some kids would benefit from just going out with their mum or dad in the park and having a kick around. And they'd go, oh yeah, but it needs to be formal training. Not all the time. That's a little bonding time where they may be having these wobbles, where they get that little bit of love back. Yeah, it's my dad. My dad's having a kick around with me. Yeah. That's what I want. I want to enjoy it in that way. There is that. But you're right, the swimming thing is, I think they're a different level of training, aren't they? With certainly the times of day that they have to do it as well. Over here, it's like 5 a.m. and stuff like that. So they've got to want to do that. They've got to want.
But it's like anything; it's a dedication, isn't it? You've got to be dedicated to your craft, whatever it is you want to do. And unfortunately, these days, there's so many people, and the bar's so high as a cost of entry to be a professional that you're going to have to be relentless in your pursuit towards that goal. And if you're not, there'll be someone else who is.
Yeah. There's the thing, the stats are at 99.99% of UK football, UK youth footballers will never play a professional football match. One of the parents I'd mentioned before, they said that in the academy, they were told that, was it 0.4% of all the kids in that academy would play a Premier League game, not play Premier League. That might come off the bench. It might be one game, then that's it. That's the stats that we're working with. So it's what else let's work towards that. Of course, let's work hard and what else and get all the lessons from that. But let's not make it 100% that needs to be what happens, otherwise you're a failure. I love what you just said there around, it's almost like a course correction, isn't it? Right, okay, Orson, you said you wanted to do this. Your actions haven't really shown us that you wanted to do this, so let's have a chat.
Yeah.
No, Dad, I want to do it. I've just had a bit of a wobble, I want to get my head right. Right, brilliant. And then we go again. But that lesson that he's learned from having that conversation with you will take him further than, you know, in terms of the stuff that he's going to do later in life. Just the fact that actually, hey, I've had a few bad weeks at work, but you know what, right, but yeah, I'm on it now, let's go again.
And we're engaged in his journey, aren't we, as parents? You know, that's we're not taking our eye off the ball.
No.
Pardon the pun. You know, we're engaged in it. You know, we're engaged in his well-being, because that's part. The main thing of having conversations like that, mate, is just checking in with him. Is this still something you want to do? Because it's okay if it's not. I'm forever saying that, mate. It's okay if you don't want to play football. Tell me you don't want to play football, please.
But some parents won't want to hear that, so they won't ask that question because that would be the worst thing for them. Those parents that are obsessed for their kids, that would be the worst thing for them. And sometimes you just need to have that difficult conversation. And it is. There's no instruction manual, is there, with this? There's the point of, we were talking before about comfort zones, weren't we? And about how some parents keep their children in this bubble where actually they need to let them be a bit uncomfortable sometimes, but then it's the right, how much do we do that? How comfortable do we need to make them? I think that is a good example of taking Orson out of his comfort zone, where you've sat him down. Right, talk to us, mate. What's going on?
Yeah.
That's taking him out of his comfort zone there, which is again a brilliant thing. Which I think I'm going to be using that with mine. As mine are 2 and 4, Mike. So I'm having very different conversations. We normally talk about Peppa Pig and Paw Patrol.
Interestingly though, I mean, my two, and I'm sure yours are the same, are very, very different children. And I didn't realise that was actually a thing, the nature nurture thing. I thought, blank canvas, we'll just develop to, you know.
Yeah.
Amazing people, but they're very, very different and amazing in their own ways. Orson was the kind of kid that, even at 1 year old, if you gave him a little jigsaw to do, he could not leave the room until he finished it. That's just the way he is.
Yeah.
He's just obsessed with like a perfectionist kind of trait. And that's what happened with his kick-ups, right? And that story I've told a million times about him winning FIFA when he was 7. And I said, well, how many kick-ups can you do? And he said 3. So I said, right, I'll buy you one we can do 100. Thinking it would take him years. And he went out every day in the 6 weeks holidays, and by the end of the 6 weeks holidays he could do 100 kick-ups. And then it was like, right, but that lesson there, not you do something and you get reward, there was partly that, but it was about, if you dedicate time to something, you will be able to do it.
Yeah.
And then you'll feel amazing because you can do it. It's that delayed gratification, right, for children.
Yeah.
How many kids are going to be prepared to go out into the garden in the rain instead of watching a screen and fail? And fail, and fail, and fail, and drop the ball. But the feeling they get when they can do 100, and we went to Barcelona, so he could do 100 kick-ups on his right foot, then it was 100 on his left foot, then it was 500, then it was 1,000, then we read You Are Awesome by Matthew Syed,
Yes.
great book,
Yeah.
and it talks about Beckham doing 2003 when he was 9,
Yeah.
and Ferguson saw him. So that was his kind of like, can you be the same as Beckham? And then we went to Barcelona, and he used to take a ball with him wherever we went. Still kind of does. And he was doing kick-ups around the streets of Barcelona. I've got footage of it. Like, he couldn't drop the ball. He was like glued to his foot, both feet. And a bloke came out of his shop in Barcelona and says, I've never seen anything like it. In Barcelona. Brought him into the shop and literally put him in the shop window. It was a sports shop. Literally put him in the window and said, do some kick-ups there, this is amazing. Then everyone take a picture of him. That feeling of being special because of something you've done, I think was a really strong memory for him.
Yeah.
That he's been recognised for being that little bit different, that little bit better perhaps than other people because of the work he'd done.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to create things like that for children, isn't it? Giving them opportunities to develop, but not doing the lazy parenting of just making it too easy.
Yeah. The delayed gratification thing is huge. We could do a couple of hours on that, you and I, I'm sure. But there is that balance as well of giving them the rewards for success, for things but making sure they've worked for that, as opposed to them getting it instantly, which there's a lot of science behind dopamine hits and things like that once they get it quicker, those receptors are almost worn away over time, because then they just start to demand things, and then you get a spoiled kid. But yeah, that's brilliant.
And also, like we're naturally lazy, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
we want to be safe. We want to, that's just the way we are. And it takes a lot for a human being to strive and to push outside and to do things which are challenging. But that's the only way you're going to achieve
Definitely.
meaningful things over time.
That's some story for the boy to tell when he's older, though. That a shopkeeper in Barcelona, we got married there, and we were having the reception afterwards, and one of my friends came up to me and said, "Have you ever thought about, maybe opening one of your foot tech academies over here?" I said, "I think Barcelona have got it covered for me."
We took it to the new camp, and that's partly why we went, because again, part of your job, I think, as a parent, if your child is telling you they want to do something, is to create inspiration for them. Now, I can't do 100 kick-ups. I played schoolboy football, but that was it. So taking him to matches where he can feel that experience and he can watch Messi scored a hat-trick, free kick from outside the box, it was like perfect, sun's out, brilliant. But those moments of inspiration are what we can do as parents, can't we? To create this image in the mind of what, the art of the possible.
Yep.
And I think that is important for parents to do. There's the practical element of it about finding pathways and how to achieve goals and having agreements and supporting, but there's also the magic.
Yeah.
And what can you do as a parent to just create that little spark in your child's mind?
Definitely. Last question for you, mate. It's been brilliant. I really appreciate your time. Would you do anything differently? You can just say no to that, but reflecting on...
Oh, there's always something you do differently. If anyone... To answer that question with no, you'd have to be a narcissist or a psychopath. There's always things you can improve and do differently. I think I would not have coached his first team. I would have not screamed from the sidelines. And I think that would have created a really important age for him, kind of 7, 8, 9, a little bit more freedom. And I wonder, I don't think I have, but I suppose in my mind, if I hadn't have been that parent who wanted it so much for him, if I was able to take my own emotions out of it, I wonder whether that would have made him an even better player. That's probably it, really, because I think everything else we could have done to support him, we have done.
You've reflected on it and then that, yeah. You've mentioned the row a couple of times, and I wanted to finish by telling everybody what you're doing is it 50 days?
Leaving the country in about 50 days, it's about 60 days now.
So can you just, because this is the background you've had and what you've achieved already, but then to be doing what you're about to do is a different level. So can you just tell us a little bit about...
Yeah, I'll tell you why I'm doing it first, just to frame it, because obviously we've spoken about motivation, haven't we, quite a bit. So Orson was 5 weeks premature, so we had to feed him through a tube and stuff, but he was all right. But Gabriel, my youngest boy, was 9 weeks early, £3 see-through, on life support. Then we got him home after the intensive care stuff, and then he got meningitis, back into intensive care, lost him a few times, got him back. Really, really poorly baby. So it was in that experience that I understood for the first time that the specialist equipment in the PICU isn't bought by the NHS, it's bought by charities. And so I wanted to do something meaningful. I know you've been through similar experiences. Meaningful for other people in our community. So I initially raised about 1,500 quid in 2011, but I felt like I wanted to do something more. So in 60 days' time, while everyone's having the Christmas dinner, I'll be rowing solo across the Atlantic from La Gomera in the Canaries to Antigua, 3,000 nautical miles. Just me. I'm supported by the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, which is an organised event. I think it would be a little bit too risky to do it without some support on land, but it is an unsupported row, so I won't see anyone else for those days that I'm out there. Probably going to take me anywhere between 50 and 90 days. And look, part of the reason I'm doing it, it's not just for the charity. We've raised 150 grand already. It's brilliant. I'm thankful for your support as well, mate. Part of doing it, and I was talking to Austin about this when we were having this conversation about his football on Sunday, was that at a really important age for them, at the age when I was off the rails, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, I wanted to show them that even their old dad, their embarrassing dad, can do stuff which most of the people can't do. So there's lots of people now rode the Atlantic, but there's more people gone to the moon than rode the Atlantic solo. So to do a process and a project which takes years, and I've been at this for over 3 years now, I've sacrificed a career for it, and an amazing job and everything else. For them to witness that, at the minute they're telling me they're not bothered. But I hope when they're old enough to reflect on it,
100%.
that they'll realise that some of the lessons that they've learned through this process have been worth it. And when they're standing in Antigua, watching me raise a red flare as I come across the finish line, knowing what I've gone through, and they see the state of me after 60 days at sea, then going out in the garden and kicking a football when you don't want to when it's raining will just be a walk in the park.
Yeah. Matching and mirroring, like we spoke about, I don't think it gets much better than that, really. And where can people, if people listen to this now that would like to get behind the initiative and donate, or just spread the word, where can people find?
So
you and
So the Atlantic Grappler is the website, atlanticgrappler.com. You can find me on Instagram, at the Atlantic Grappler, and Facebook as well. You'll be able to see me set off live on the 12th of December on Facebook. Atlantic Campaigns, their Facebook page. You can track the boat across the water. Every 4 hours. It'll give you my exact location, speed, course over ground, where I am in the kind of standings in the race. And I would encourage any parent to talk to the kids about this.
Yeah.
Like there's a geezer in Roundhay rowing across the Atlantic, right? In fact, another bloke did it a few years ago. So use it as a tool to inspire your own children. This campaign, this project, has raised a lot of money, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm more proud of the amount of people it's pulled into the vortex of positivity. So in lockdown, I posted all my workouts online. People all over the world saying, "This has just got me off the couch. Thank you." Rode a marathon every New Year's Day at 5 a.m. for the last 3 years. Don't know why.
As you do.
But look, use this if you want as a tool to inspire yourself, inspire your children, and if you want to get involved and support it, then please do.
We'll tag you in and put the website on the links that we send out and stuff. But yeah, the fact that it's for such an amazing cause as well, as you say, close to my heart as well. That the work they do in that place is literally unbelievable. So the fact that it's raising money for a local establishment that helps our children as well is just
I'll
amazing.
just say this, mate, real quick. So I've just transferred 65 grand over to Leeds Hospital's charity, and we've purchased 10 neonatal monitoring machines that are going to be in the PICU before Christmas.
Amazing.
So to be able to do that and to have people in our community who've helped achieve that, even before I've started rowing, it's unheard of, man.
Yeah.
Most people don't realise the funds until after. So we've made a huge impact already. But I want to keep doing more. I'd love to raise 200 grand, 250 grand.
Let's hopefully. So we'll tag everything in, guys, and if you can help, please do. Mike, thank you so much for that. It was brilliant. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks, buddy.